Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Technology Evangelist podcast. I'm Dr. John Fluke, Technology Evangelist. And today I've got a great discussion with a good friend of mine, Dr. Chad Duplantis, who is a general dentist is it Plano, Chad? Is that where you are?
That's where I grew up, but no, I'm in
Okay.
Fort Worth,
Okay. So
Texas.
he's in Fort Worth, Texas. A lot of you may know him as one of the principal people from Facebook's Dentists in the Know. Um, but we're going to have a great talk about where we're headed in the future of dentistry. Chad, thanks for joining me.
Man, it's an honor to be here. It's always good to see your face, John. I look at your study where you're sitting and I wonder how your wife puts up with all the dental crap that's on the counter. And I just know that she's just a saint of a woman. So
That she is. I've made some pretty bad decisions in my life, but the best one I made was that one. Um,
that's good.
yeah, no, that's the way it ought to be. So, Chad, I always start off with an origin story. So, wind it back so that people know, how you got to where you are now. I always tell people mine starts at age 3. So go back as far as you want, but tell us, like your life story, what got you into dentistry and what got you to the point that you are in the industry now.
Yeah, so great question. How long do we have? No, I'm teasing.
We got as long as we want.
I'm teasing. You know, um, Dentistry started for me, and it goes back not quite as far to three, but I would say to 14 or 15.
Mhm.
You start high school, and I remember having this conversation with my own kids, and it's like, hey, up until now, nothing really mattered, but on the first day of ninth grade, everything starts mattering because
Yeah.
that's when grades start counting and this and that. And, when my dad kind of had that conversation with me, I was like, oh shit, I got to figure out what I want to do for my life. And so I told my dad, I said, I'll never forget this conversation. I said, Dad, he says, what do you want to do? I said, Dad, I want to do what you do. And he looks at me and he goes, oh no, you don't want to do what I do. And my dad was an auditor for an international drilling company, and he traveled all over the world, and he just looked at numbers and made sure that people weren't stealing from the company and made sure that they were making money and that they were putting money in the right places. It was a really I thought it was a cool job because he traveled everywhere, but apparently it sucked. So anyhow, I decided that I wanted to go into the medical field, and I had the wonderful opportunity to take a health class in high school. Became a member of what's still around today, Health Occupation Students of America. And I had a clinical rotation series my junior and senior year of high school. And I had started thinking that I wanted to be a dentist. I always thought going to the dentist was cool. I knew that they worked like 3 or 4 days a week. My dentist was a pretty cool dude. And I was like, yeah, I could do this. This seems like a good idea. Well, anyhow, clinical rotations had no dental rotations. And I specifically asked, I had a friend that worked at a dentist office, and I said, hey, can we do a dental rotation? Yeah, sure. Well, they redirected the rotations, and I got to do not only dentistry but oral surgery and endodontics as well, which was pretty cool at the
Oh,
time.
wow.
And I met one of the most powerful people in my lives, a woman by the name of Dr. Becky Matthews, who's now Dr. Becky Cloetta. She's a dentist in Plano, Texas, and she's a wonderful human being. She always had a smile when she got to work. She got to, use her eyes and hands to make artwork in people's mouths, and she really connected with people. And she's the reason that I decided that dentistry was the path for me. And the rest is just kind of history. And uh, just to kind of bring it all full circle, I got to spend a lot of time with her and some of her dental colleagues who were very close in the area. And this past August, I got to speak at the Southwest Dental Conference, which is the one that I grew up going to. And it was a walk down memory lane. I walked into the host station where they give all the speakers their stuff, and I knew every dentist in there because they were all friends with Becky. And we took photos and we laughed, and they remembered me as this stupid 16-year-old kid at Becky's office, and here I am, 26 years into the profession. So That's my full circle.
That, you know what, that's really cool. And I think it's cool that you got to come home
Yeah.
and do that meeting in your hometown. I mean, that's, it's funny, I think, that oftentimes people don't avail themselves of like local experts. It's probably easier now with all the electronic communication we have, but um, I always like to say that even Jesus couldn't work a miracle in his hometown.
Yeah.
And it's it's kind of funny because I think people sort of get the impression sometimes that, oh, I know this guy or gal, I've known him a long time, I know where their office is. Um, you know, what could I, possibly learn from them? And so oftentimes people that have quite a name, nationally or internationally, the the people that they're around all the time, it's like, oh, we want to bring in a big name from outside the area. Chad can talk to us anytime we want. And anyway, so I think it's really cool they invited you to do that. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, there's a joke that we say. I mean, is this podcast geared towards dentist and everything? Or is it?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. No, well, the joke is always, and I think you know this too. You never shit where you sleep, and
yeah,
so
yep,
so it's always kind of like, oh man, I got to give a lecture in my hometown. You got to be on point because those
yeah,
people know
you
where to
do.
find you, you know?
Yep.
And it's not that we BS a lot, but I'm telling you, those are the most, in at least for me, those are the most puckering lectures that you
Oh,
can
yeah.
give and when it's your hometown. I mean, because the the opportunity to have somebody that you really respect in your audience is it's scary, and
It is.
it really is an interesting occurrence to do that. So
I remember, so there's a meeting here in Kansas City that the dental school hosts every year. And for I think it was like my 20 or 25-year reunion, they asked me to give a program. And that was a little stressful. But then I remember I got up in front of the room and I got all plugged in and I looked out and I was like, I know everybody.
yep,
And that is that the intimidation factor on that is huge. People don't
yeah,
realize that one. And then I don't know if you were on the call or not, Chad, but Chad and I work with Vista Apex Dental Solutions on different projects, and they had one on endodontics a couple of years ago, and they asked me, hey, can you do like 10 minutes on endo? Because as a general dentist, I do a lot of endo.
I
And
remember
I
this.
was
Yep.
like, okay, were you there? Yeah. And that was horribly stressful because then I'm like, okay, 10 minutes, I'm kind of putting stuff together. And then they were like, yeah, and we're like, going to let you go last. And we've got three endodontists going ahead of you. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, oh, oh,
And one of them was
terrific.
like Brett Gilbert, the
Yeah.
endodontist of social media, and then I think it was Brett, and then Ryan Walsh, and then was it Rico? Was Rico
I
the
think it
third?
was Rico Short,
Yeah,
who's
I
like
mean it's
endodontist to the
like
stars.
it's like goodness gracious. I know. Yeah, it's interesting. I was giving a lecture on veneers, cosmetic dentistry,
Yeah.
and I look in the audience. This is this past April, and freaking Ross Nash is there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah. What
And
am I going
and
to teach Ross Nash?
yeah, but the best is when somebody like that comes up to you afterwards and says, "Hey, that was enlightening, and I picked up some things," and that's the greatest compliment that you can receive.
Yeah, it really
And
is.
and by the way, John, you did fantastic, man. You were right in there in the league with those endodontists, and I know that you do great root canals because I have a patient that I referred to you, and I think you got to do one on him and his wife and mother-in-law and all that stuff. So there you go.
That's cool. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. But yeah, it's a great compliment, but it's also a great responsibility. There's no doubt about that. So,
Absolutely.
Chad, let's talk a little bit about the changing landscape of dental education because you and I are both, I guess, part-time educators is maybe how you would classify us. Um, but the world, the world has changed a lot. It changed for me. I was practicing right before the internet took off. And, I was connecting with dentists on AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. I had three dial-up accounts back then. But it's changed so much, especially since COVID. Everything's shut down. I'd never even heard of Zoom. And I like to think of myself as fairly tech literate, but I'd never heard of Zoom until 2020. Um, where do you see this all going? Because it seems there's such a huge online component now.
I got to tell you a funny story. So you talk about Zoom, and I just got to say this real quick. Um, when COVID hit, like right before, I really never dabbled in the stock market, just individual stocks, right? And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna invest in some stocks. And so I took like just a couple $1,000, and one of the companies that it suggested that I invest in was Zoom.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
$42 a share, right? So I buy 100 shares of Zoom. And I'm like, oh, let's see what happens, And it
Right?
hovers around 42, 43, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and holy crap. I sold that stock. My wife was like, hold on to it, hold on to it, hold on to it. And it got up to, I think I sold it at like 360, and I
Oh
think
my
it got up
gosh.
to 420. And I, my wife was like, you should have held on to it. Should have, well, who the hell knows what's going to happen? But
Right.
who the hell knows, who the hell knew that that was going to happen at that point in time?
Yep.
And now it's like at $85 a share. But it's funny that you say that. I had heard of it, but I didn't really use it. And good God, it's part of who we are now. I mean, we're on Zoom
Yeah.
right now. But the
Right.
other thing about Zoom is that it's also really changed education, and
Hmm.
from our perspective, it's so much easier to just sit in front of a computer and
Uh-huh.
listen. But the hard part is for an educator, we feed off of the reaction of the audience. And so that's very hard to do. Now we've taken it one step further, and you can get fantastic interactive education off of Zoom. There's companies like, I'm just going to throw out their Clinician's Choice. They've done a
Yeah.
fantastic job with their hands-on live program where, you know, 200, $300 at the most. You sign up for a webinar, you get an hour of lecture, and then you get an hour or two of clinical skills. They send you a kit, and you're doing it in your operatory at your own pace. You can have a beer, a glass of wine. Hell, you could even have bourbon and do
Right.
your education. So I see everything kind of, Zoom really changed. It's not really Zoom changed. COVID changed the way that we educate. And then so we go back to live events, and first it's really fantastic. Everybody was so excited to be around one another, whether you had to have the vaccine or not. You just want to be there.
Right.
You
Yeah.
got whether you have to wear a mask or not, everybody just wanted to be there and actually be around human beings that are living, breathing. You may not be able to see their entire face, but hell, it was great. And then I see it
Yes.
kind of dying off. Um, I went to no knock to the ADA, SmileCon
Right.
event, but I went there a couple years ago and it was a ghost town.
Hmm.
I went to the Texas Dental Association this past year, and it the education was fantastic, but the convention floor was just, it was less than desirable. So I think,
Right.
as we were talking before this, we'll see a couple of these big events that are going to weather the storm. I think it's going to be, we already know that SmileCon's not. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know what's going to happen to the AGD, but I think Greater New York, it'll die down somewhat. It'll become more concentrated.
Right.
Chicago, I think Chicago will always be there as long as I can see. Hinman, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Hinman. If you've never been, please put it on your calendar and go. It is a fantastic event. I think that will stay. I don't know about Yankee. I don't know about Rocky Mountain. I don't know about these others. I hope that they do, but it's changing. So we're seeing less of the larger scale events, and we're seeing more of these study club type of events, and we're also seeing some of these lower tier destination events that are taking off. Um, it's changed. It's really changed.
And along those lines, I think one of the things that has changed it, and most people probably know this, and I mentioned it in your intro, but Facebook made it so easy before COVID. It made it so easy to connect with people.
Hmm.
And you have a Facebook group which you set up called Dentists in the Know, and the slang for it is Dinks.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how you guys got going with that, and what you're doing with it, and where you think that's going to go moving forward.
Yeah, that was a COVID passion project. I'll never forget the date, March 17th of 2020.
St. Pat
Uh,
Day.
yeah, I was cleaning out my desk at work, and we had come to work that day, and the government just shut us down. The state said,
Yep.
y'all are done. And
Yep.
I think looking back, I think that was completely idiotic because we were probably some of the safest places that people could go. But I get it.
Agreed. Yeah.
And fortunately, Texas got us back quicker. But I mean, not only did the government shut us down, we couldn't come to the office. I had probably 20 lectures lined up, as you did too. And then the
Hmm.
phone starts ringing. And I mean, it was just like the dominoes were falling like, hey, this lecture's canceled. This lecture's canceled. And I'll never forget we had this lecture. Did you ever speak for the the Chicago AGD? It was this old guy. He passed away a few years ago, but he was like 89, 90 years old. And he calls me and he goes, "You better be preparing for that lecture because come hell or high water, this is happening." And it was like April 15th. And I'm like, okay, yep, okay, we'll be there. Yep, yep, yep. And then all of a sudden he's like, "The damn government shut us down. We're not happy. This isn't happening." Well, yeah, we could have told you that. And this was like,
Right.
a week prior to the event. We knew it was going to happen. I mean, Chicago of all
Sure.
places. But anyhow, I digress. So Jeff Horowitz, dentist out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, calls me and says, "What are we going to do, man? All these lectures are canceled." And he's like, "Have you ever thought of a dental variety show?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And I was like, "I've been thinking about like bringing manufacturers on and just giving them a little bit of our time back." And he's like, "Well, yeah, something like that." So we started Dentist in the Know, and it was a weekly, we called it the Hump Day Happy Hour. We were sitting around on our duffs. We developed some content. We had, a segment where it was like we did an intro, then we had some news, and then we had a guest, and then we kind of closed it out. And that's still the format that we use to this day. We brought in Dr. Jennifer Bell, and she's become our leader in the news segment of it. And honestly, if we didn't bring Jennifer Bell in, I think it would have lasted about 3 months because Jeff and I are kind of stupid when it comes to that. And here we are going on 6 years. And it's really kind of rolling. You mentioned a Facebook group, but it's funny. We've kind of gone away from Facebook, gone more towards podcast, Instagram, TikTok. I didn't know what the hell TikTok was. I still don't have a
Right.
TikTok account. I use my wife's, and I get in
I
trouble
don't
because she's
either,
like,
just so
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, my wife's is on my phone, and I like things, and she's like, "Why did you like this?" And I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Now I'm getting all these dental things," and I'm like, "Well, because I don't have TikTok." She's like, "We need to get TikTok," and I'm like, "I don't know how." But anyhow, it's just kind of gravitated, and it's grown rather organically, and it's something that we love, that we're very passionate about it, and it's also pivoted a little bit because we were at first very industry facing. We're open to everybody within the industry, and now we have consumer facing episodes as well. And last night's episode was, how often should I go to the dentist? And you kind of think that we're going to get on there and say every 6 months, mic drop, boom, done. And
Right.
we could have talked on that subject for 3 hours. I mean, we found ourselves saying, "Hey guys, we got to cut this off because, people don't want to listen to this anymore." But it was fascinating, the direction that it took us, and hopefully that consumer side takes off. And it's been a lot of fun. We just have a lot of fun.
You know, I think it's interesting that you guys have moved. Well, first of all, that you're smart enough to have figured out that, the landscape changes. It's funny, I think, that when when Facebook bought Instagram.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, okay, Snapchat was starting to grow. And I mean, Instagram was pretty hot, but I was like, I don't know, gosh, professionally and stuff, I don't know if it'll work. And I was kind of wondering because it's like everybody's on Facebook now. Why would they buy Instagram? And, Facebook now, as everybody knows, I think, is really like if you talk to somebody probably, I don't know, 30 or younger, they would generally say, yeah, Facebook is what my mom and dad use.
Yeah. Yep.
And,
Yep.
most of those people in that, I'm not even sure what the demographic is, but younger folks for sure. It's all about Instagram. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and now of course I'm like, oh well, that's why they did it, and that's why I work in spit for a living, and
Yeah.
the geniuses at Facebook do what they do. Um, but I think it's cool that you guys have figured out, this whole evolution thing. And it kind of reminds me of dentistry in a way. Dentists tend to be very procedurally focused, very like outline kind of focused, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And oftentimes, I get pushed back because I like to dance on the edge and I'm trying new stuff and doing new stuff and people will be like, well, that's just dumb. Why would I want, I remember I bought the Itero version 1.0.
Yep.
Um,
Click,
it was
click,
like,
click, click, click.
yeah,
Yeah.
2006 or 2008. And I had my friends, like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. What are you going to do with this dumb thing? There's all you're doing is spending money. There's no ROI on it, blah, 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 blah. And, and then, whoo, and so my whole point in this is that you guys evolved with what you do as far as bringing information to the profession, but it applies across the board. You know, in the early 1900s, people were yelling, "Get a horse,"
Yeah.
and and now there aren't many companies making buggy whips anymore. So you've got to evolve. I think it's cool. You guys also, I want to give a shout out to Dennis in the Know because you guys do an incredible job of marketing. I did so that everybody knows. I did one is it Hump Day Happenings? Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
Hump Day
Okay.
happy hour. Yeah.
Okay. Hump Day Happy Hour. So I did one Hump Day Happy Hour. And unfortunately, Jennifer couldn't be there. I think you had to do the news that episode, but it was you and your partner Jeff and me. And a week after I got done, I got this box and it's branded Dentists in the Know. A little package came UPS, and I'm like, I open it up. They sent me like two highball glasses, some aluminum ice cubes. They're little cubes that are full of water and you freeze them. And both the ice cubes and the glasses were branded with the Dinks logo. I got some stickers. And it was just, I mean, I was like, that's super cool because all I did was hang out with a couple of people that I'm buddies with and we talked dentistry. And then I got all these cool tchotchkes that
Yeah.
showed up. So you guys is marketing. And then last year, I think it was last year, you guys were on Podcast Row at the Chicago Midwinter meeting. And you guys were just cranking out the content there. It was impressive.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I know that Jeff would agree with this. It is 100% Jennifer. There's a lot of really good things that she's brought to it. Her neighbor happens to be his company is he builds booths for conventions.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
so he built us a booth and a podcasting station, and then we keep it within the family. We hire our kids, they come work for us. And I mean, you were talking about Facebook and all these people that have made money out of their garages and out of their dorm
Yep.
rooms and stuff like that. I'm holding out hope, okay? I got a 23-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. Mark Zuckerberg's dad, dentist.
Yep.
Michael Dell's dad, dentist. There's hope.
Yeah,
There's hope. Okay?
there is
That's all
hope.
I got to say. You know?
Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's cool too. I'm gonna throw a little trivia out to people just because I think it's a cool story. So Shofu, which is actually I think the company that sponsored the
The
time I
episode.
was
Yeah.
on, I think.
Yeah.
Um, People have probably noticed in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years that Shofu has stepped up their marketing. And one of the things they have is like I don't know if you want to call it a spokesmodel or whatever, but they have a little anime doctor, and her name is Dr. Anime, which I think is pretty cool. My son, who's 25, is like super into anime, as you know, most of the people in that demographic are. And Dr. Anime was actually designed and updated by Jeff Horowitz's son,
Yeah, yeah, it's
which,
pretty cool.
yeah, it really is cool. And
And come full circle. Now Jeff Horowitz's son is working for one of the largest dental labs in the nation, and he's working and teaching exocad.
oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, he's at Evolve in Buffalo, or
Okay, I got
Evolution Dental Sciences. Yeah,
in all seriousness, when we get done here, I want you to hook us up because I'd love
yeah,
to have him on. That would be
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, he'd love it. It's great, it's really come full circle. And my son is a videographer, and he's gotten some jobs within the dental industry. And and my son, I always have him bring a buddy, is with us in Chicago. Jeff's son is usually with us in Chicago, and then Jennifer's son is usually with us in Chicago, and they all work at our booth and do
Yeah.
various technological things. So
So you're planning on, since I'm not sure when this episode will drop, but we're recording this in December of 25. I'm sure it'll be out before the midwinter. Are you guys going to be at the midwinter again?
yeah, we've got a booth. We'll
Okay.
be podcasting and everything. So I know that you will hopefully be able to make some time and come do a little interview in the booth. And
I
you
will.
know,
As a matter of fact, you and I we're gonna be competing this year because Technology Evangelist is gonna be podcasting from the Chicago Midwinter too. So
okay, good,
we
good,
should mix it up. Seriously, we should I should stop by and do some stuff with you. You guys should stop by
absolutely,
and do some stuff with me because it's all,
absolutely, we'll do it.
yeah, it's all about making the industry better. And I love hanging out with Jeff and Jennifer. They're good people. Um,
Absolutely.
let's spin this a little bit more. Do you think that with where you are with Dennis and the Know Now, do you ever see you guys progressing on to the point that you're actually doing certified CE?
We are doing
Oh, I
certified
didn't know.
CE.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, yep, we are. That's really funny that you say that. We got the AGD PACE
Right.
certification, and
Which is
that's
not easy. I want people to know that
yeah,
is tough to get.
it's not easy. And it's funny because Jennifer is so analytical. God bless her. If she listens to this, she might punch me in the throat, but she's so analytical. So we get the PACE certification, and we had it for a year, let's say,
Okay.
and we didn't do any CE. Guess what? You got to re-up.
Yes.
So we re-upped, and then we started doing CE this year, and we're doing all web-based CE, but we can offer CE. We actually we have this coming year, we have, I believe, two a quarter that we're going to be doing. And we have those mapped out. We're going to be doing our buddy Dr. Ryan Walsh would be doing one on
Yep.
endo. I'll be
Good.
doing one on
Great
cementation. The
guy.
first one's going to be Jeff doing a sleep one. We have several kind of mapped out. So yeah, we do offer CE, and I think the ultimate goal was to be able to do some, not necessarily, well, I would say larger scale events, but not as grandiose as like Chicago Midwinter or something, more like a large study club. We have
Right.
that vision down the road, but some in-person stuff, but it's all online right now.
Okay. And that's something I think that we will probably see education, I think, move into. And I say that because, it used to be, in the old days when you and I started, that
Back in
everybody
my
went,
day.
yeah, exactly. I walked or walked to school uphill,
Yeah,
both ways, snow knee deep to a giraffe. I carried my little brother on my back, and I was grateful to do that.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, it was, like I'm in Kansas City, and in Kansas City, everybody went to the Chicago Midwinter meeting. And so you got there and you saw tons of people, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that in the future, what we'll see is things like Dentists in the Know because it's online. People are interacting with each other all the time. They get to know those people. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the Dentists in the Know show and I'll know, 5,000 people that are there. So it's not just like going to a convention and you're a face in the crowd. I think the social aspect of that, of actually knowing people and being able to hang out with people, I think that's like the next step in in-person events. I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be a lot of them. As far as like the ones we know now, New York, Chicago. I just got back from New York Tuesday night, Wednesday morning at like 2 a.m. Um, and the attendance there was great on Monday, or I'm sorry, great on Sunday, which is the day the show starts, and then less on Monday and significantly less on Tuesday.
Yeah,
So,
it's tough. I've always thought it's just a tough weekend unless you're a local to have an event because if we're going
yeah,
there to speak or participate in a booth or whatnot, I mean you're leaving your family on Friday unless like the two times that I've done it, my wife has family in New York, so we just decided, well, you know what, Thanksgiving's going to be in New York this year. And
yep,
and so that's the way we do it. But for those that don't, golly, it's tough.
yeah, it is. I think the last time I was there, I'm like you, it was a long time ago. Um, and the family went with me.
Yeah.
And we actually we were staying down on Times Square, but we took a train and we had Thanksgiving dinner with my buddy Marty Jablow.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Because
awesome.
yeah, he's south of the city. So anyway, um, let's move a little bit into clinical. Chad, I
Sure.
know that you've done some stuff with 3D printing, and do you do any milling at all?
Yeah, by mill as well. Yep.
Okay, so you and I are in the same clinical position with this. Do you see a change coming more towards not everything in office? I don't think we'll ever get to that point, or if we do, it's going to be, way down, maybe 10 years, maybe longer if it happens. But do you see more and more of like what I call bread and butter, the easy clinical stuff moving into the dental office and away from outsourcing things?
100%. I think you're foolish if you don't, it's just it's such a wonderful avenue for your practice and for your patients. And, if you want to provide an experience for your patients and provide the best quality, and you've got to be able to do things in-house. But I couldn't agree with you more that I don't think we'll ever get to a point where everything is done in office. For me to mill or print something, I have to be able to do as good of a job or better than the laboratory. And so when it comes to, let's say multiple unit cases in general, a lot of those are going to the lab because those require characterization that I don't really have the time or desire to do. And that's why labs are, that's what they're trained to do. That's what they do the best, and they can make wonderful restorations. I mean, but if we didn't think that dentistry was headed in-house, I think the greatest example is a great visionary out in California. You might have heard of him. His name's Jim Glidewell. He runs a rather small laboratory out in California.
I
Uh,
think I've heard of
yeah,
him.
might have heard of him. Once again, started out of his garage. What's it with these people in their damn garages? I mean, gee whiz. But
Why didn't
started
I
out
put
of
a
his
dental chair in
garage.
my garage?
Yeah. And so about 10 years ago, 10, maybe a little bit over 10 years ago, largest lab in the world decides we're going to introduce a mill. Why? Why are you going to introduce a mill? What does that have to do with that's going to compete with your bread and butter? Well, no, he had a vision, and it was a very good vision as to what was going to happen. And then what does he do? Well, let's get into printing. Well, that's going to take way more business from you. No, it's going to bring me more business. And then, well, let's get into clear aligners. So th that lab has a vision because 10 years ago, labs were very much no, no, no. I mean, let's go back 25 years ago when CEREC really became hot, you know, no, 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 we don't want dentists to have that. That's going to take away from our business. And then everybody kind of
Right.
found a way to work in the same sandbox. And I think these larger labs and a lot of the smaller labs have in turn embraced the technology and realized that it's here to stay.
You know, I think those are all great points. And one of the reasons that I want to grab Jeff's son and have him talk about exocad is just all of that. Because that's where I think it's going. People, I think people don't quite grasp how easy it is now to do some of this stuff. And I've got kind of a funny story about me. So I had a patient come in and we were gonna mill a crown that particular day. And dentistry being dentistry, no plan ever survives contact with reality. And it was tooth number 14, and we didn't have the right shade of block
Sure.
that particular day. And I was like, crud. So I told the patient, I was like, it's can't do it. The shade's not going to be right. And he was like, well, can you show me what it looks like? So I brought in the block, and it was like an A1, I think, or something. And he was like an A2/3 shade. And he was like, is it this tooth up here? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, nobody sees it anyway. It could be purple. I don't
Yeah.
care. You know.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing is, you mentioned clear aligners. When clear aligners came along, I remember that orthodontists were just like, oh no, no, don't, you can't do that. And what they found, I think it's interesting because I saw some study. Now it was from a line, so they've got some bias probably, but it was that doctors that were doing clear aligners actually referred more ortho because as they got into it and they started noticing, you know, alignment that needed to be corrected more and they became more knowledgeable about it, they actually referred more to the orthodontists. And then they were doing the ones that they felt comfortable with in their office. And I think Jim Glidewell hit it right on the nose, a home run, might I add, that he saw where this is going and he saw how, the rising tide floats all boats, as the old saying goes. And he's embraced this. I actually beta tested that first mill
I did too.
for
Yeah.
them. Okay, yeah, and it's super cool.
Yeah.
And I figure for the bread and butter things, I think that's fine. I've told this story on here before, Chad, but I'll tell it to you just because I think you'll find it interesting. A couple of companies a year or two ago, Coca-Cola and Toys R Us, and they did some commercials and they said, you know what? We're going to cut costs. We're going to do away with the human actors. We're going to use AI. We're going to CGI our entire commercial. And when they aired them, they started getting complaints from the public who said, I don't know what you did, but these people look creepy.
Yeah.
There's something about them that doesn't look right. And I think it's the same with labs. There's something about what humans touch from an artistic standpoint that a machine doesn't have a soul, is what I like to say. And I
Yeah.
love tech as much as anybody, probably more. But I think there's certain things that require human vision. And when you said characterization, that was exactly what I was thinking. You're always going to need those people that can put their soul into it or, whatever. I'm never going to try and match a single central in my life. I'm
No.
not going to do that because I
No.
can't. I don't have skill.
I couldn't agree more. And you talk about technology. Let's talk about another one of our friends, and the AI interpretation of radiographs. Let's talk about Pearl real quick.
Yep.
I do a lot of speaking for Pearl, and I know there's Overjet and other companies out there, and I'm sure they're all great, but I just use Pearl as a reference point and say, that computer is picking out shades of gray.
Yep.
It's picking out shades of gray. And if the shade of gray is off, it's caries. Whereas, they call it the second opinion, and I'm sorry, Pearl, I call it the third opinion because we need to use our clinical acumen. We need to utilize our own radiographic interpretation. We need to use AI's interpretation of the radiograph, and then we need to come back and use those first two again and say, okay, does all this jive? It doesn't take a long time, but the best thing that I think AI has done is that we get sloppy. Not intentionally, but sometimes we get sloppy. AI draws your attention to detail. And I think from that, it's priceless in value because I think everybody should be utilizing AI to interpret radiographs.
I do too. I had just so Mike Buckner was on the podcast, and his episode is live, folks. So check that out.
Yeah,
But the way I looked at AI and the way I describe it to people is because I'm sure you speak for Pearl. I'm sure you hear this, where there will always be a couple of people that are like, I don't want a machine telling me what to do.
it is.
And yeah, exactly. My response
Yeah.
to that, and sometimes I can be a little obnoxious about it, is do you use an Explorer and a Perio probe? Well, yeah. I said, so if you go into a pit and you push the Explorer in and you feel it give, and then when you try and take it back, you're like, tink. Does the
Mhm.
Explorer tell you what to do?
No.
No. I'm like, no, the Explorer and the Perio probe gather data. It's
Hmm.
all they do. And that's all that radiographic interpretation is. It just gives you more data,
That's
and
exactly right. And if it's telling you what to do, if you're utilizing it for that, then you, my friend, are not doing dentistry the right way.
bingo.
And there's a word that I'm specifically avoiding because I never want to throw that on another colleague. But
Right.
I will say this, I do think that AI, unfortunately and unintentionally, has a very high potential to be abused. And we need to be
Agreed.
careful of that.
Agreed. And I I will go one step further on that with the abuse of AI and say one of my concerns about it is AI being used by our friends, the third party payers.
Absolutely.
Because if you can train AI to say, that's not there, or that's not big enough, um, then they're telling our patients, well, no, that didn't need to be done, or it doesn't
Yep.
need to be done. And like you said, the mind, the evaluation, the looking at it, the knowing the patient and knowing their history, all of that factors in. And I truly think that there should be some way that, just like big corporations, they hire somebody like Deloitte and they're like, audit us, show our
Yep.
stockholders that we are truly profitable. There's no shady stuff going on. So they bring in a third party auditor to look at everything and make sure that everything is as it should be. I think there
Absolutely.
should be third party auditors that look at the AI systems that are being used by third party payers to say it's legit. They're using the same training or the same system identical to what the dentist is using. Then we're all playing from the same deck of cards.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, but that's another point that I bring up. People like, should I have AI in my office? Well, you know what? Uh, do you file insurance for your patients? Not are you on any, plans? Do you file
Mm-hmm.
insurance for your patients in your office? Yeah. Well, you damn sure better have it because they're using it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
yep.
You're absolutely right. And this is why I love you because
Yeah.
we think a lot alike. But a little nudge, before AI, I've had a multi-doctor practice since 2007. And before AI was available, it was very common for, one doctor or another looking at a radiograph and say, "Hey, look at this. And my big thing was I wouldn't even say anything. I said, just look at this and tell me what you see. Because I didn't want to
Yeah.
say, do you see something on the distal at 12? I just
Yeah.
want to, I don't want to taint it. And so I'd have them look at it. And sometimes they'd say yes, and sometimes they'd say no. And if they said no, and I thought I saw something, I said, look really close at 12 for me. Just tell me if there's anything. And once again, they look and sometimes they go, well, maybe a little.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing that AI is doing. Is just, did you
Yep.
look here really closely?
Yeah,
And
I love turning it on and off,
yeah,
turn it on and off and see what gives. I like to look at it with it off first and then with it on second.
you know,
So,
and so I work off of multiple monitors, and I like to always look at radiographs for carrier. I like to look at them in my office because I know how the screens are set up. I know the resolution. And I even go so far, we use EagleSoft. I'll open up the Bite Wing full screen in EagleSoft and then
mhm.
open it up full screen in Pearl
Yep.
and look
Yep.
at them together. And then, like you said, click the AI on and off on the Pearl one just to get a feel. And I remember I was talking to somebody at Pearl and they were like, why do you do that? And I said, I just want I'm an info junkie. I want all the information that I can. So I want to see how did, and the Eagle software, there's no AI built into that, or at least if there is, I'm not using it. But I want to see how did their algorithm show the bite wing, and then how did Pearl show it?
Yep.
And it just
Yep.
gives me more confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I love that, and that's kind of the way that I do it as well. So,
Okay.
and I even have another screen open up with their charting as to, what's treatment planned and, what's existing and what we did and
Yeah,
what was done
absolutely.
elsewhere. So, yeah, like to look at it all.
So let me ask you about with printing and
Hmm.
crowns or permanent, air quotes, permanent restorations. Where are you on board with that right now? Because some people say it's ready for prime time. We should be cementing these things. Of course, using Dr. Duplantis's, cement protocol. But
Yeah.
there are people that say that. There are people that say I wouldn't do that at all. There's people that say I'm willing to try and tell the patient, this is kind of cutting edge. We're going to see how it goes. Where do you fall on that spectrum, Chad?
Man, right now I've used hybrid ceramics for the past 15, 20 years in my practice. And that's basically, the composition of what we're able to print these days for a quote unquote permanent restoration.
All right.
There was an article that came out in the Journal of Prosthetic Dentistry, and it said that at this point in time, they favor or they find that trying to dumb it down a little bit, that
No, that's okay.
milled hybrid ceramics are superior to printed hybrid ceramics. Okay. And
Mhm.
I do believe that because we've had success since a huge debacle that we had in the 2015, 2016 range. We had a huge debacle with a product that came debonded that was an issue, and so my fear
Yep.
is that it's too much too quick for the printed restorations. Do I think that we will get there? Absolutely, 100%. But I am not printing anything that's quote unquote permanent. Temporaries, for sure. Permanent, I'm not ready yet because I've had great success with the milled hybrid ceramics, and I want to stick with those until we have, kind of a track record of literature. Just because it's released doesn't mean that we have a track record of literature. I want to see these things 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So that's one thing in life that I will be late to the game on is those printed restorations, just because I'm having such great success with the milled ones.
I want everybody to know I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know his answer, but you and I are exactly on the same page with that. Um, I'm a Midwest Catholic boy, so I humorously tell my patients, I've got some patients that, like they need a crown. If there's no, the tooth is broken, there is no doubt that this thing needs a crown.
Yeah.
And they'll look at me and go, Fluky, I can't afford it. It's just right now, it's just not in the cards for me. And So in those situations, I tell patients, well, you know what? In dentistry, we have temporaries and then we have permanent. So I have the I have a choice for you. I call them purgatory crowns. So I make a Catholic
Yeah.
joke. I said they're not
Yeah.
permanent, they're
Yeah.
not temporary,
I
they're in
love
this
that. Yeah.
nebulous area, and it may last 5 years. I don't know. It might. It may last 10. I don't know. But if as long as you go into this knowing, then I'm totally good with doing that as long as you go into it with open eyes and you understand. So that's we're on exactly the same page with that.
And I'm gonna flip it and say this, that I know you well enough and you know me well enough that I'm
Right.
gonna say that if that fails within 5 years, you have a plan B and you're gonna make it right for the patient.
And I tell them that as well.
Yep,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I,
You got to.
well, Chad, we are butting up against the amount of time that I normally allot for these. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap. We'll get you back because, guys, you
I
and I
want to
could.
do a phase two on something that we briefly touched upon
Yeah, what?
in
Tell me. So I,
insurance.
okay, very cool. I know you're passionate about that. So we'll get you back. We'll have another discussion. Any closing words for anybody about you or Dinks or anything else you want to leave folks with?
Just gonna say this, man. I don't know if I've ever said this before, but I think it all the time. I don't know if I've ever said it out loud. Dentistry is as fun as you make it. And it's provided, both of us a great lifestyle and a great peace of mind every day when we come to work and when we leave work. And I would say that for the both of us, the biggest part of that is technological transformation and dabbling in technology, and you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some, but just have fun doing it.
Absolutely. It's the best profession, it's the best healthcare profession on the planet. 100% believe it.
Absolutely.
All
So
right. Well, Chad, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Technology Evangelist podcast. We are sponsored by Medidenta Digital. And from the bottom of my heart, I am super grateful for all they're doing to help bring this message to everybody. Um, Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
adios.